I grew up in a musical family in northern Missouri, which I always say is it's Green Top, Missouri is my hometown. It's at the top of Missouri, in the heart of America. And so if you ever want to come up and visit us, you know where we are.
All right.
And so it was traced back 5 generations of the Vincent family, and continues now with my daughters. This would be 6 generations now of the Vincent family, continuing in the music. But they were playing long before I was ever thought of. It was just something that they did. Growing up, when I was 5, we had a television show, a radio show, made our first recording. When I got started into school, my dad would pick me up each day. We played till dinner. After dinner, friends came over and we played till bedtime. So people say, "Oh, you're exaggerating." I was not. You talk to anybody that knew our family. If you came to Green Top, Missouri, musicians would travel through, join in. Everyone was always welcome. They would, we'd have after dinner, the furniture would all be in a circle, bring some kitchen chairs in, move the kitchen table back. We'd play in there. The people would listen. They would sit around my grandparents' living room. And so I thought everybody was at their house doing the same thing. When you're little, you don't know that this is not the way it is.
So you did that for several years, many years, right?
Well, at that time, it wasn't just my family either.
Yeah.
It was my mom and dad, Johnny and Carolyn Vincent, my grandpa Bill, my dad's father, my Aunt Catherine. It was mom, dad, grandpa, aunts, uncles, cousins, and friends. And so this TV show was called The Sally Mountain Show. Right. First dating after, I think it was in 1967. That was the first documentation. I think we had the show. And then they decided to make our first album. First time, I'm going to guess maybe for any of my family to venture away from this tiny town that was like population 350, Green Top, Missouri. We traveled to Kansas City, Missouri. I would have been 5. I remember those buildings looked like they reached to the sky. I remember the record. I would love to go back to the building because from what I remember, they had this one microphone they set up and I sang How Can You Refuse Him Now, a Hank Williams song. I'm standing there. It seemed like that building, that ceiling went up to the sky too. I'm sure it's just because I was so little and the microphones were so tall and the people were so tall. But it just really seemed like it was unbelievable. And I remember we got lost and we're driving, we're the Missouri hillbillies driving around Kansas City, Missouri. First time we've been to the big city and we drove around and we were so lost. We didn't know where we were going. Finally found the studio, but that was the first recording. It eventually became, my grandfather got emphysema. And so he was no longer, that's how I think my mother came to play. She played piano and sang before in church. But when she married my father, he said, my dad's got emphysema. He wasn't physically able to play the upright bass. Yeah. So my mom started playing that. And that she always says that, it was a necessity. We said we always played or we didn't eat. Right. And she says she took us off the bottle and put us on bluegrass. But it eventually became my mom and dad and I again. My grandfather passed. We worked for a time. I remember when I was 7, because that's how I started playing mandolin. When I was 6, I played a snare. For my 6th birthday, I got a stand, a snare drum, and a set of brushes. So my first instrument was actually a snare drum, and I played the snare in the Sally Mountain Show. All of the other instruments were taken. It was probably the only one left. And then 6, 7, we worked at a country music show every Saturday night in Marceline, Missouri. Yeah. And so my family, we were like the family that came up and we would do it. It's like there were groups. There was, everywhere, everything from the country band. My mom would play the upright bass. There was also an electric bass player. Dad played electric guitar. He might play a little fiddle, a little banjo, just like Justin Moses does. And so they decided, the guy said, there was a lot of wives, and I would just sing. I wasn't playing an instrument, and a lot of the musicians' wives would come in and sing. So the guy decided that anyone who did not play an instrument didn't get paid. Yeah. And the musicians got $10 each. That's what the pay was, $10 a Saturday night for 4 hours, I think it was. And so Dad said, here's a mandolin. Here's G, C, and D, and you're going to be playing this for I guess it was 2.5 hours each Saturday night. This is what you're going to be doing, And then also we're jamming each night. So now I'm jamming with a mandolin, and he would say, "Take it, Rhonda." It's like, take what? I'm 7. I don't know what I'm taking here, but a wonderful way to grow up because he he would get you started on the instrument, and you took it from there. We were
Right.
jamming each night, so it was a way to, I guess, teach you to be creative on your own, to learn to take a solo. I remember we were talking on the bus the other day about tuning. We didn't have tuners, electronic tuners.
Sure.
We had a tuning fork. And we were talking about, and people would probably be offended at this, but my dad was the king of jammers. If he went to a festival and if he jammed, everyone was welcome. No matter who, it didn't matter what level, if you sang well or not, if you played well or not, everybody got a turn. You got your turn. But he also would not think twice if you were playing and your guitar was out of tune. He'd get the tuning fork and put that on your guitar, for you to tune it. And if you didn't get it in tune, he would just grab it and he would tune it for you and hand it back.
Yeah.
As a public service, I guess you could call that. Some people could call that just plain rude. But anyway, we're here at the Country Music Show. That's how I started playing mandolin. And then my grandfather passed away. It became my mom and dad and I. And we were the Sally Mountain Trio for a while. Then Darren came along. There's 8 years difference. He's 8 years younger than I am. Well, to go back a little bit, I think a significant part of this, music was prevalent in the Vincent family. But in 1964, I was born in 1962. In 1964, my father had a bad car wreck. Missed a curve around Worthington, Missouri, where he and Mom are from. It broke his neck. Was paralyzed from the neck down, was not expected to live, let alone to ever walk again.
Wow.
So he gained his mobility, part of his mobility. He told the Lord, he said, if you'll give me one good leg, I'll drag the other one. That's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
He every one of his right leg, he would drag along. And the toe out of every shoe, he would drag it. So he would walk with a cane and make his way and stand up and play until, many, many years later, where he lost all of his mobility until there toward the end. But I think he couldn't run after us. So I think music became a way. That's why he picked me up from school each day. He knew where I was. We're playing till dinner. Friends came over. He had a constant watch on where we were. We were at arm's reach. Boy, you did not want to defy him because he would catch you sooner or later. I mean, I remember running from him. And, really, where are you going to go? That house, eventually, he would catch up with you, and he would make sure that you paid for that. I'll just say that.
Yeah.
Many times. And that's, today we have, there is discipline. And he thought nothing of pulling off his belt and snap, snap. You knew what was coming. I think that because of that, I think that's why he kept his family very close. He learned, too. We went to our first Bluegrass Festival in 1969 in Ottumwa, Iowa. Here we are playing. This is a Sally Mountain show. My grandpa was there, and we played. And once again, my father always encouraging young people, always encouraging anyone to perform. There was a young guy by the name of Monty Grover, banjo player from Illinois, and he was there. And he invited Monty to come up and sing. He chose the song, You Can't Tell the Boys from the Girls. And that's, amazingly, that was 1969. I guess that was when they started growing their hair long. And so Monty got up and sang that, and when he came off stage, there was a hippie that met him back and just absolutely plowed him right in the mouth and busted him right in the nose with his fist. So anyway, it became Mom and Dad and I, then Darren came along, and we just traveled playing bluegrass festivals. Dad being, disabled, Mom did all the driving. I remember when we didn't start out in a bus. Right. We started out, and this is what I think, in today's analogy, you don't start out in that if you can't afford that. Right. We started out in a station wagon, and then we went to a double cab truck with a pickup camper, and then we got our first, 15-foot camper, and then we got a bigger camper, then we got a motorhome, and then in April of 1985, we bought Jim and Jesse's bus. And you had to do the double clutch to get it to work. My mother had never driven a double clutch. Well, she'd driven a clutch car, but never a bus. Right. Something that was 35 feet long. We came to Nashville. She got in the bus. Jim took her down the lane, showed her how to double shift. Took her down the lane of their house and showed Darren and them all about the bus a bit. And then she got in that bus and drove it back the 550 miles to Greentop, Missouri without ever driving a bus before after one lesson down the lane. Now she's a double clutching mama. 1985, April. I did You Can Be a Star. Well, I did this song on the show, and as I'm singing, Mom and Dad are singing harmony behind the curtain. They wouldn't let them be on camera. Jim Ed came over and talked to them, and anyway, he hired me, and 2 weeks later, I went to work for Jim Ed Brown as one of the Jims, playing fiddle and mandolin, or fiddle, guitar, mandolin, singing harmony with him.
Right.
And in addition, flying into Sally Mountain shows when he wasn't working, or if he was just doing the Opry or something. Just doing the Opry. How'd you like that? I would fly in and catch the shows with them. And in fact, here's another bit of history. So 85, I know what I was going to tell you.
Okay.
So before that, about 1979, families playing festivals all over, mainly in the Midwest. We're trying to branch out. We'd go to Texas and play the campgrounds. We went to Florida. Dad said, let's go to Florida and be in the sunshine and get out of these cold Missouri winters. And so we're in Florida playing the campgrounds, and we went to a festival at the Everglades Bluegrass Festival. And there was a group called the Bluegrass Cardinals, and we met Lance LeRoy. And get this, he wrote us a letter. And we didn't use the phone or email back then.
Yeah, right.
So over the course of, from the time we met him there, he wrote us a letter, and he said, Mr. Vincent, if you ever tire of doing your booking, I would be honored to represent the Sally Mountain Show. So I think it was probably from 1980 to 85. Lance booked us. That's when we got to travel a good part of the United States. He took us beyond the borders of the Midwest. Then 85 is then when we did You Can Be a Star, or I did You Can Be a Star, went to work for Jim Ed. The family still has the bookings from Lance, but they felt like their key, I did most of the lead singing.
Right.
So it wasn't the same. They actually hired various people throughout that it was 6 months, April to October, I worked with Jim Ed. Dale Sled is from Missouri, and he worked with them a lot of the time. But toward the fall, he heard about this young lady from Illinois, and he hired her to come sing She Wore My Clothes and played in my place. And that would be Allison Krause. Pretty cool.
Yeah,
I laugh when people say, you guys sound a lot alike. And it's like, well, there's a reason for that. I think that was before she was even singing. I think she was just playing, and I think she started singing during that time. But we would play twin fiddles. And she told me years later, she's like, if you had blue shoes, I went and bought blue shoes. I mean, I had no idea.
Right.
I had no idea of that. But because we're 10 years, I'm 10 years older than Allison. So I'm probably maybe 12 at the time. I was pretty much a newlywed. Well, I got married in 83, December. So I'd only been married a year. And I was living here in Nashville with relatives, basically sleeping on their couch when I was home. And he was in Missouri. And after 6 months of that, he said, I can work anywhere. So either I'm going to move there or you're going to move back here. Well, I found I missed being with my family. I missed being with my husband. And so I moved, and I made a choice. Jim Ed brought me, the day I told him, I said, I'm going to have to quit. And he said, I want you to come over. Went to his house, and he sat in his office. He lectured me for 3 hours and told me, he said, look, you've got to be here. He said, you are going to make it in the music business, but you have to be here. He said, they are not going to come to Greentop, Missouri and say, we want you to do this. You've got to be here. And I did not listen to that because my yearning to be home and with my husband, with my family. But what I did at that point, I wrote letters. When I say that's so funny. I wrote a letter. Oh my gosh. But I wrote letters to all of the bluegrass labels that I was aware of. Rhonda Records, Rebel Records, I suppose Sugar Hill. And maybe another one or two. Yeah. And I wrote letters to all of the labels. And and most of them just sent a thank you very much, but we're not interested. One label wrote back, and that was Rebel Records. And he asked me, he said, how many tour dates do you have? Which, and this is good information for anyone who thinks that you want to be in, if you want to be in the music business, you want to have dates. That's what a label's going to look at. How many dates are you working? Unfortunately, until you have some music, and people are aware of it, you can't get the dates. It's kind of like, which came first, the chicken or the egg? And it's a very confusing state to be in. Luckily, I was already working with my family. We already had a established date. So we had a very full schedule. I sent our schedule back to him. I think I mailed it. And I think he called. Anyway, I made my first official solo project for Rebel Records. And I think I did 4 for them. 3 as a solo artist, Dream Come, or the titles leave me. This is bad. Second one was A Dream Come True. The third one is Timeless and True Love. The first one's left my mind. And then we did a Sally Mountain show, Rhonda Vincent and the Sally Mountain show, Bound for Gloryland. Mm-hmm. And so we did those 4 for Rebel. And while I was recording the CD, Timeless and True Love, I met James Stroud. As I was Carl Jackson came over to play on Homecoming. We were recording that. Well, I was in Studio B of Reflection Studio. Clint Black was in Studio A, and James Stroud was producing him. We met in the break room. Carl was there, and James Stroud came in there, and Carl said, I want you to meet Rhonda Vincent. And he said, oh, yeah, you got some of your music? Well, in my mind, because we had the bus there, and I was recording, and we had all the CDs, in my mind, I'm thinking, Carl wants me to give him CDs. Those things cost me money, and he just wants me to give them away to this guy that I don't even know who this is. Right. But I didn't. That was what if you could have read my mind, that's what my mind said. Yeah. But I got up. Carl said, "Do it." Went to the bus and got some CDs, and I gave them to James Stroud, not knowing who he is, not knowing no one knew who Clint Black was at that time. And he came back the next day, and he said, "I want to work with you." And so by a series I did the typical Nashville showcases. I put together country band and would hire the musicians. And I did a showcase at Douglas Corner. Anyway, I was the first person signed to Giant Records. I was probably the first one to leave. Right after, I did 2 projects for them in 96 and 98 with James Stroud and Garth Fundis produced the first one. The second one, James Stroud and Richard Landis. But when I cut the first tracks and I started doing vocals, I was also managed by Jack McFadden, who managed Buck Owens through all the Hee Haw days. He was managing at the time a brand new artist that just came out called by the name of Billy Ray Cyrus. Achy Breaky Heart had just hit. But I remember they called me in the office soon after I'd done the vocals. I'm so excited. I'm from Green Top, Missouri. I'm in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm working with the best of the best. Jack McFadden, James Stroud. What could be better? And they called me in the office and they said, can you get the bluegrass out of your voice? And I'm like, because when I was as a teenager playing the festivals, they would say, your voice is so country. You should be in country music.
Yeah.
And now I'm in country music. And they said, can you get the bluegrass out of your voice? Very conflicted for many, many years.
Right.
But so that was, I think, my greatest disappointment about coming to Nashville was finding out it's not about the music. It was about a product. I mean, and learn. I got to learn. I'm very fortunate that I learned from the best and the best. Sure. I learned about management, about booking. Jack McFadden also had a booking agency, and I got to meet a very dear friend, who's a guy who's become a dear friend, Stan Barnett, who taught me about the booking side of things and learning the publishing and the songwriting and producing, how all of that works. And I always say, no matter what your situation, you can learn something. It might be good and it might be bad, but you always take from whatever situation you're in, learn from that either way. And I think that's I look at the country music days as my musical college years. Sure. The first thing they did was take me to a stylist, and they tried 100 shades of blush on my cheek. I had never seen anything like. They said, you're wearing the wrong size of clothes. It's like, really? I mean, we didn't worry about that. That was, right. I mean, we dressed up, yes, but to say they said, what's your colors? I never had my colors done before. They said, you're an autumn. It's like, okay. All right. And so, but they bought the clothes, they got the makeup, they sent me to, they call it media training. And at that time it was SAT. That was what you had to keep in your mind. If you go do something, it was single album tour. And just always remembering all that. So they really did prepare me for a different of the business, I think, part of that. Right. I already had had majored in accounting in college. So
I read that as well.
Yes, is that on there too?
Yeah.
So so I liked accounting. I also took some business law. I love that, and I took photography classes. Yeah, and I always loved that. So once again,
so those are all still things you're interested in now too,
oh,
right?
Definitely, yeah, definitely so. I think that was the problem within the college years, is I had all these interests that I had, probably I had never been able to pursue them because Dad had us so concentrated in music.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, there wasn't anything besides hunting, fishing, hunting, or music. That's it. And so when I got to college, it's like, oh my gosh, look at all this other stuff there is. I love photography. I did that. So anyway, 5 years in Nashville. I never did move here. I still lived in Missouri because I think there was a determination. My dad also said, don't ever let someone tell you can't do something.
Right.
So it's like, okay, there was a determination. It's like Jim Ed Brown said, I can't make it if I live in Missouri. It's like, I'm going to do this. I'm not moving to Nashville. I want to live in Missouri. Well, and then I started having children and we decided we wanted them to be in a very rural area. We just recently, in 2013, we have a 4-lane highway that comes into Kirksville, Missouri, and stops.
Yeah.
We were 100 miles. We're still 100 miles from an interstate, a mall, anything like that. So we purposely chose to raise our family there. At that time, you didn't lock your house. The keys stayed in your car.
Yeah.
It was just a different time.
Yeah.
And so we chose to live in Missouri, and but yet making the trip back and forth to Nashville. I think a significant point in all of this that I've and started learning this. I think it was 1992 maybe, but I got home. It was about 5:00 in the evening, and I had this is when we had a Codaphone and the red light was blinking that we had a message, and I hit that and it said, "Hi, this is Dolly Parton, and I want you to come to Nashville and sing with me." It's like, really? That's got to be it. Wouldn't you think that's a joke? But I called the number. Carl Jackson had worked with her on this is another thing we can do a timeline on.
All right.
It's the project Slow Dancing with the Moon. And Carl had told her that I was going to be in Nashville the next morning or the next day. It was going to be 2 days from then, but I jumped in the car when I found out this was for real. They said, we'd like to be in the studio tomorrow at 10:00. Packed a bag. Darren and I drove overnight. Got here, I think, at 3 or 4 in the morning, and I was in the studio with Dolly, meeting her for the first time, singing with her at 10 a.m. the next morning. And I mean, what a thrill to perform with her, to record with her. A great lady. And in 2005, I had E. coli and had a colon resection from being very, very ill, nearly dying to the point, and did not think I would be sitting here today after that experience. But when I got out of the hospital, Dolly Parton was standing in my living room in Kirksville, Missouri. And she's just an amazing woman who, in working with her, I think I try to pattern myself, look at the kindness that she exudes, things you don't even know she's done. Just an amazing lady, and I appreciate her so very much.
Do you feel like, your business acumen, toward music, is that something that you enjoy, or is it something that out of necessity you feel like you have to be good at?
Well, I number one think it's definitely a necessity.
Yeah.
If you want to continue in the, in the lifestyle that you lead, or the just to keep a band on the road. I mean, there's a lot of decisions that you have to make.
Yeah.
You have to look at. I think first of all, I had a great example in my parents. My mother, we performed. And maybe we didn't, at that time, I think it was more if someone asked us to come and play, we did it. We once went to Oregon, 40 hours. We drove one way and played a 60-minute show and drove 40 hours back. Yeah. I doubt that we made money on that trip.
Right,
because at that time, the attitude was, if someone asks us to play, we'll do that. But there was also this, we're a family, so the income, when you have children, you're paying your bills. Right. You don't have musicians to pay. So, so I think I had a great example in my parents. I think in school, I think that's something I have probably a natural interest in. Yeah. Perhaps that's why in college, it's like, what do I like? I love accounting. Yeah. And in high school, I worked for, like, they have a COE. It was called a COE program where your senior year, you can go, if you got enough credits, which I did, you can go to class half the day and work somewhere the other half. Well, because we played on the weekends, there's only one place that would hire me, and it was Green Top Lumber Company, and I kept the books there. Yeah. So I think I got a taste of that. I love that, went into college with that. But it also there's a different scenario in country music. There's 5 years there. That was not what you would call, that became a money pit for us, which is why we made the decision not to pursue that anymore, for several reasons. Number one, I think the music that I loved and that I wanted to make and what my voice would really fit is more a traditional country music.
Yeah.
That was the time when Shania Twain, it was moving into a different, the style of country music was moving into a different style. I didn't fit into that, I don't feel. So that's when after 5 years, 2 records for Giant, and then I came at a crossroads in my life. And it's like coming out of 5 years of college, of music business college, really. And I said, what am I going to do with my life? And don't you think that's what everyone faces? I have to now make a living, or we have to make a living for our family. But through those years, I mean, Herb and I, at some point, we had to buy groceries off a credit card. That's how bad it was at some point. Now, I also have to say that James Stroud and Jack McFadden came to my rescue when they found out that we were in a very desolate situation. They helped out tremendously, you know, because it's not something we talked about. That was a private thing. You know, I'm just trying to do whatever I need to do. But, you know, it came to a point, it's like, I can't do this. So what's wrong? Well, you know, let us help you. You know, they helped me on a personal level, not just a business level, and not just because I was on Giant Records, but it was a personal, it was like, here, let me just give this to you. So thankfully, we got through that. So here I'm at a crossroads. We're not going to, we have no more money just to keep pouring into this. I basically we got together with some friends, Alan Jones, Joey Winneman, and Earl Heese. And we got in my living room, we just started playing just for fun. It's like, hey, let's get together. We did a few festivals. And that's when you say, I think I did not realize that was such a natural thing that I did, the music. It was something I did in my life, not now it's going to be a career. And now I'm going to do this to make money, because it was never said, I'm sure we made a living as a family. It was not something, it was never stated. It was not such a blatant thing in our lives. And so I put together, and Herb comes in, he goes, hey, I got an idea for a band name. Rhonda, Alan, Joey, and Earl. Rage. Rhonda and the Rage. And so that's where the Rage came from. That lasted for a while, and then soon, as we started getting a few dates, that didn't work, but they had kids, and Alan, Joey, and Earl were no longer in the band. So then I found some new musicians that were still in the Midwest. Rob, Bob, and Bull. Bull Harmon, Bob Black, and Rob McConnell. So, and now this is at a time when, well, there was several different options, but I started talking to Rounder Records. Skaggs Family Records came into play at that time. There was a little delay there. A lesson in persistence, and I don't think I've ever told anyone this, but my intention was to sign with Skaggs Family. Loved Ricky Skaggs, as I'm sure everyone does. I think Ricky is probably the greatest singer in the world, I don't care what style it is. Huge fan of Ricky, because I love all of the country records he makes. You just love him. I love his music and his voice and his taste in the music that he does. So when Ricky Skaggs has interest in signing me to his label, I took that very serious. And I think he was even going to produce the project. But it was not happening as quickly as I'd hoped. I'm stymied because I've come from country music. I need to do something. I'm not sure what. In the meantime, Ken Irwin, I would talk to Ken, and he would go, I'd say, well, no, I'm signing with Skaggs Family. And I think a year went by, and Ken, and this is something I think a lesson in business, he was very persistent. He was never, why don't you do this? He would call and say, have you signed a contract? I said, well, no, I haven't done anything like that yet. We're pretty close. He goes, well, if you have interest in Rounder, we would be interested in having you. And I finally, he called on the right day, because he did this periodically throughout that year. And by golly, he called on the right day. And I said, you know what? I'm ready to do something. We haven't been moving into any direction really yet. There's no paperwork. There's really nothing. And he said, well, I can have you a contract tomorrow. I said, really? And I said, well, I have some concerns. And I told him the concerns I had. He said, you write everything down, all your concerns, and you let me know what they are, and we'll take care of that.
Yeah.
And sure enough, my greatest concern, I was watching labels sign artists and just to sign them, and then they did not release their projects. So I put in there that if I did a project, that it had to be released within like maybe 6 months of when I turned it in, something like that.
Yeah.
And now that doesn't mean, and so that was in my contract. I could have forced that, I guess you could say, and contractually. Anyway, I signed with them, 3 records. And then I got my record, I did Back Home Again, and recorded that, released that. And from that, that's like the moment you know you're in the right place at the right time. The record was released in January. The Wall Street Journal did a incredible review that said Rhonda Vincent is deemed the new queen of bluegrass. Yeah. It's like, whoa, that's, I mean, I did not have that perspective.
Right.
I'm just out here, we're trying to make a living. I'm doing what I love now. I'm playing the music, but still there was a reality of reviews that had been, I didn't know. That was an unknown. And Rhonda did an incredible job of setting it up. But just as a business mind, my album, I really wanted it to come out probably 6 months or 9 months before that. But they said, no, we have other releases coming out, and we're Rounder. We're not a mainstream label, so we only have so much shelf space. Right. And ideally for you, we realize that your contract says that we need to release this today, but if you really want us to do the best job we can possibly do, then we need to release this in January of 2000. And that's another thing, you got to really think about this. Or is it, I know my contract says this, but what's the best thing for my project? And that was. And so you really have to, sometimes you have to listen to people, even though your heart and I want this, you have to think about it and be really smart about that. When's the best, if they say that's the best time, then let's do it in January. And so that's what we did. I would have to go back and count how many projects, at least 7, I think, with Rounder. And then I came to another crossroads in my life. Mm-hmm. I intended to re-sign with Rounder. I had fulfilled my contractual obligations, intended we would re-sign another one, very much more knowledgeable than I had been. And now I'm an established artist. They basically established my career for me. Right. And I'm very appreciative of that. But instead of re-signing with a label, I started talking to people. And I think this is another thing you want to do. You want to talk to people and get their input. Hey, what's the trend these days? Right. What are people doing? Uh-huh. And I found people were telling me, you should start your own label. And that's not for everyone. And I like to, I guess you could say, micromanage. It's like, I just want to look out for virtually every part of what we do. Early on, when we first got the bus, I was underneath the bus doing inventory, the CDs, and Stonewall Jackson walked by from the Grand Ole Opry, and he scolded me. He goes, "What are you doing in there? An artist does not get under the bus. Right? You have to. Don't you have people to do that?" I could have people to do that, but I think if you are going to run a business, you need to know how many CDs are in there. You need to know and make sure that those are being sold. That there's, even though you trust everyone, you can't really trust anyone unless you can trust yourself to do the work and make sure that you're doing the inventory, making sure you're ordering the CDs. I've heard of bands who, it's like, well, I don't have any CDs to sell. Well, how come? Well, because nobody ordered them last week. It's like, why not? Why not? Order the CD. You have to, there's so many pieces to this, whether you have your own label or not. Exactly. Just running a band, there's a lot of expenses. There are a lot of things, there's a way you can cut corners. I also see people who bring in so much equipment. My goal and my attitude toward this, I want to keep it as simple and as easy. I want to be as plug and play as we can get. Now, we walk in places and they go, "Is that all you got?" It's like, that's all we have, and I don't want any more. I don't want to pull a trailer. Yes, I could pull a trailer. Right. We could have lots more equipment. I own Myers speakers that we could bring with us and a whole sound system, and we could, we could plug everything in. I choose purposely. I want to make this, I want it to be efficient, and I want it to be feasible. And I mean, this is right down to, in our business, it starts with Herb, who my husband does all the booking. That came by necessity also. I was booked by Keith Case. Then I went with CAA. And then one day there was something I didn't agree with.
Yeah.
And I just said, well, I can't be here anymore. People said to me, are you crazy? You just left the largest booking agency in the world. And I had to look at my own values and my own business, I guess the way I would want to do things. And it didn't jive with what I wanted to do. And I called my husband. I said, I'm going to need a booking agent. He goes, what have you done? And it's like, so he started booking me. It was the greatest thing I've ever done. When you have an agency, here's just plain fact. You're going to pay 10% to an agency. We don't have to do that anymore because, right. He says that I should be paying him, that he's worth a whole lot more than that.
Yeah.
But, my money is his money. Mm-hmm. So it's all in the family. So we save a 10%.
That's a huge deal when you look at, the big picture of over a year's time, how much that adds up to, 10% of what's being brought in.
Absolutely, yeah. And, I guess before that, he was managing me.
Yeah.
And, in bluegrass, I don't know. I've never really had a manager per se, aside from Herb, taking calls and things like that. Mm-hmm. There might be opportunities that I miss, but that percentage, when I talk to managers, they wanted, and this is another plain business fact, pretty much 20 or 25% of the gross of everything you make to manage you. And when I looked at the contract, when I had a management contract, there was only 2 requirements that management said, and that was to advise and counsel. And it's like, to advise and counsel, I can't give up that 20 or 25% of things that I feel I've worked all my life to bring it to this point that I would pay somebody. Maybe there's an opportunity. I don't know. And if someone has an opportunity that is valued at that, I welcome you to come join me because I would like that. But in bluegrass, I just don't feel like that's not a percentage that I want to share. And so you got booking, you got management, that's all in-house. So now what are we going to do? Do I re-sign with the label?
Yeah.
Do we start our own? And because I think I'm very involved in everything, I decided, I looked into it and it's like, you know what, this would be a really awesome thing to do, to have our own label and to keep, once again, when we sell a CD, to have the 100% of that coming in versus the balances, your balance sheet in a label. Basically they're a bank and they give you the money. I think that was, so I start my own label and I start recording. And I'd always done this before, produced my own projects, put together the songs, booked the session, the musicians, paid the musicians. And so that part was not any different. So I am doing all this 2009 leading up to 2010. And there was one oversight that I did not anticipate, because 2010 is the year in which my daughter Sally and Hunter Berry, my fiddle player, got married. So I started looking at my checkbook and going, what is going on? The money is really depleting fast. Well, we're buying wedding dresses, but I'm also paying for an album that I'm recording. My first album for my label was called Taken, and it was taking the money right out of my checkbook. Well, before I had always been given an advance. And that was the one thing that I was like, wow. There was no advance for this record. I have to come. That advance has to come out of my checkbook now.
Right.
And so then I made a new goal for myself, that after this first project, I made a special account for upper management music. My goal became that this first record, sell enough records to have enough money, enough profit in there to pay for the next one.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I always want the last record, so when the next record comes out, it's paid for.
Right.
And I'm not having to look and say, oh, how am I going to pay for this? So, but that was the one thing that I really didn't anticipate. Now I learned so many other things in ISRC. There's so many different aspects to a label, distributing and so many other things that, you have to kind of stay up on what's going on and reading online, what the other trends are in the other styles of music or even in your style of music. So when I first started upper management music, my attitude was, let's distribute this all over the world. Where do you want it to go to? I want it to go everywhere, to the ends of the earth. Send it everywhere. And so then the reality of the royalty statements, because if you make a record and you have songs and you do not write the songs or do not have co-writers, you have co-writers, you have to pay royalties.
Sure.
And so now here we are, and Herb says, we've got to get somebody to do this. Well, me being who I am, that's money. I am not going to do that.
Yeah.
So I am the one who does, I figure all of the royalties after the fact, after the sales. And I go through, and every quarter, it's the joke at our house. Do you have the royalties done? No, I don't. And I'll wait till the night before or whatever, because you have 45 days from the end of the quarter to get the royalties figured and reported and paid. And so
that's definitely something that people that probably wouldn't think of as, oh yeah, if I wanted to do this kind of thing, like put out my own records, that, oh yeah, I've got to do this too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You have to be accountable to all of the songwriters, and they have auditing privileges. So you want to do it right, because they could come back and audit you and look at it and say, hey, how'd you come up with this?
Yeah.
So you better know.
Yeah.
You better have the numbers and everything. And so I found that when this is several months, it doesn't generate itself immediately. But when I got the first statement, I had pages after pages after pages. And I found when the record was sold in Japan, by the time you have the money conversion and all of the fees, and now with streaming, most of them were 0.000001.
Yeah.
It's like, what is this? And I went through thousands and thousands of pages, and you're dissecting a tenth of a penny. And so I said, okay. I started looking. Now you have to go back and look. How can this is time consuming?
Oh yeah.
It's so time. It's like. Yeah. And Herb kept saying, you've got to get somebody else to do it. It's like, I'm not getting somebody else to do this. I'm going to find a way to make this more efficient. And what I found is we just released to Canada and the United States. And I figured if somebody wants this from another country, they can go to RhondaVincent.com and order it. We built in the pricing, the shipping, and so they can still get the music.
Right.
But to have the music, or basically a song, diluted down to a fraction of a penny, it seemed counterproductive to me. Especially when, you do a project, and I don't know that I should say this or I shouldn't, but let's take the Christmas album, for example. The budget on that was $65,000. Now, part of that was a little excessive because of the celebrity 12 Days of Christmas.
Yeah.
But still, you can't pay back $65,000 or anything else at a fraction of a penny. And that comes down to just simple math. You don't have to really have a college degree for that.
Right. So, do you listen to a lot of music these days?
I'm not a big. I'm usually either working on a project, listening to songs. Yeah. Otherwise, I'm going to be listening to. Usually, I have about 4 stations that I listen. I listen to radio. On my tune-in radio on my phone. I listen, and it depends on the time, whose show is on when. Yeah. WSM in the morning, usually, no matter where I am. Then I go to the Hymns from the Hills by Joe Mullins, classic country radio up in Xenia, Ohio. That's about 12 o'clock Central Time, and then the banjo shows after that. Then in the evening, and depending on who has a bluegrass show, I have a friend, Sweet Brenda, who has a show on Wednesday night and Sunday morning. So I listen to her. And then on Saturday, there's Chubby Howard, steel guitarist, used to be with Boxcar Willie, tells all kinds of great stories. So I'm kind of what do you call that? I never really categorize that.
Yeah, I don't know.
I have shows that I listen to. Right. I like talk shows, but I found it's usually related to music, but not usually specific. If I'm going to listen to music, I usually find one song and I listen to it like 1,000 times over and over, the same one over and over. When I get on a song,
you just really
I wear it out until I don't want. And usually it's one that I want to sing, so I listen and listen and listen. Then I'll try it, and if it doesn't work for me, then it's like, okay, that's not going to work. But I remember there was a song that Josh Turner had out, I think 3 years ago, and I listened to that because Chubby played it on his show. That's why I heard it. Yeah. Listened to it, and then it never worked for me, and I haven't listened to it since, so I need to go listen to it again. But, just finding whatever brings you joy. But to say I take not much of a CD listener, that's pretty crazy, because I make CDs and I want people to listen to my CD, but I don't think I'm much I'm more of a radio person.
Sure. Do you have a favorite food?
A favorite food? Well, probably pizza.
Pizza.
Is a big one. I can probably eat pizza almost every meal, like even for breakfast. I like beans and cornbread, pizza, cheeseburger. You can just pretty much normal food.
Gotcha.
Yeah, not much on the. I mean, I eat some other stuff, but
yeah. All right. Favorite dessert?
Yes, my grandmother made it caramel dumplings.
Oh, nice.
And a lot of people haven't ever heard of it.
No, that sounds interesting.
And when we were sponsored by Martha White, they took her recipe and made it into a Martha White recipe. So you can probably find that at marthawhite.com.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, people can go check that out.
They can fix it. Yeah.
Yeah. So favorite movie?
Probably Pretty Woman, Richard Gere. Love Richard Gere. Love him.
Do you have a TV series that you're really into?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Everybody Loves Raymond.
Oh, yeah?
I love Ray Romano. I recently flew to Las Vegas to see his show.
Oh, awesome.
I've been looking for years because he does like 4 shows a year. And they're always on a Friday, Saturday. And we're always working on a Friday and Saturday.
Yeah, right.
And it fell to where, and I'm set up for an alert. When Ray Romano has a show, bam, I get an email that says, alert, Ray Romano's performing. And so then I immediately go to my schedule where I'm, so finally, it was a Saturday. Herb was beside himself. He said, you are not going to block a Saturday. It's like, yes, I am. I've already bought tickets, very expensive tickets. So do not book anything on that day. So I got to see him.
Is there anything that you can think of right now that you would like to make sure is a part of it?
I mean, I think the main thing is that people have the perception, hey, I want to do this, but you really, and I think there's a lot of colleges now that have programs and classes where you can still get a better understanding. We didn't have that. I basically learned by, just by trial and error, and having a band, how to deal with the band. I didn't know how to manage people. I didn't know how to MC a show.
Oh, sure.
That is, or even talk right now. Now you can't shut me up, right? But I did not have an understanding of any of that, and I had to adapt to, emceeing is still, that is an odd thing for me. But I just decided, you just talk to people, and whatever's happening now or whatever comes to mind, instead of just, oh my gosh, I have to MC. And I've seen people do that. There's bands that you have to find what's comfortable for you instead of trying to force yourself to do something. I saw this person do this, so I'm going to try to do that. But if it's not natural for you, people will know and they can tell. It's also good to go see a lot of live shows, different kinds. I went to James Taylor. I think he's one of the most natural people. He doesn't have somebody opening the show, or he just walks out on stage with just him and his guitar, which is who I came to see. It's like, that is so natural and just blew me away. It's like, oh my gosh, James Taylor's voice, playing a guitar, does it get any better than this? And he just started his show like that. And then band kicks in. It's an awesome band. But I just think you have to look at, but sitting on with a guitar, that doesn't work for my show. So I think you have to adapt things that do work and some things that probably don't work. There's a lot of things that apply to what we do or do not apply. I've seen people start off and do a lot of slow songs. Gene Watson, for instance, the bulk of his show is slow ballads. Right. I think people would fall asleep if they come to our show. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But we have there's probably the expectation we're going to come out and we're going to start it in with a really fast moving song, something really up tempo. We're going to end the same way. Yeah. There's a framework of that. And I guess they come to expect that. And maybe it's my own perception. A lot of times I forget to sing a ballad and they go, hey, you didn't do this. So I have to remind myself, because we don't use a set list. It's just, I call out the songs. Somebody said much like a football player calls out plays, and that's kind of what we do, all that song. And sometimes I just start singing or start introducing a song and they don't even know what we're going to do. And they start fiddling with K-pose really fast when they think it's one song and it's really not.
You're one of the busiest. I mean, you're on the road a lot and still just going strong, What are your goals moving forward?
Well, I think always looking for new opportunities. Yeah. New things to do. I have some upcoming projects and that's the great thing about having my own label, like the Gene Watson, the All Duet project, something I wanted to do. I had approached all the labels and not one label was interested in that. They said, you know what, there's not a market for, they called it, I think the the term is maybe wrong. They would say classic country music, but classic country music is Ray Price. That's music in the past, I think, maybe.
Yeah. Mhm.
You know, I think there's a market. We found out there is a definite market for real traditional country music.
Yeah.
And so there's doing that project with Gene. There's some upcoming projects that I want to do that I have in mind to do. So I think expanding the music, but not alienating where we are and the fans that we have. I think that's something that I like to do. I feel like very fortunate to get to additionally get to do that. And and mostly in part to the Country's Family Reunion. They have and RFD TV broadcasting the Country's Family. I do their cruise also. I invite everybody to come cruise with me there's country music by day, and I host a bluegrass jam in the night, which was very foreign to them. They did not know what a jam was.
Yeah.
And so now that we've done, this is probably my 5th cruise with them. 2017 is probably the 6th. It's cfrcruise.com. Come sail with us, and I host. If you can bring your instrument, you can join in the party. You can sing, play, or just listen. Either way, but it's become an intricate part of the cruise, and it's not even like scheduled or advertised.
Thanks so much for your time. Plug your website, your social media, anything like that?
Absolutely. Yeah, go to RhondaVincent.com. You can find out where we're going to be.
Yeah.
Pretty much, you can order all of the music and T-shirts, whatever's pretty much current in our supply and our merchandise. You can get those things there, and it's where you'll find out. I mean, usually the front page has whatever the newest project is. Mostly, though, go to Facebook. It's Rhonda Vincent Official, like Facebook.com/Rhonda Vincent Official, and post there virtually every day, if not twice or 3 times a day. Instagram, Rhonda Vincent. Twitter's Rhonda Vincent 13, and we just love to see you at the show and love to hear from you.